Hey everyone, thanks for tuning back in. It's T. I'm actually really excited about today's session because while we get into some truly chaotic internet drama, I'm finally going to finish building the main structure of my house and start on some interior decorations. I know the last two runs were a bit of a mess, but the vision is finally coming together. I've been looking for stories that aren't just crazy, but actually make you question how well you really know the people in your life. So, pull up a chair, get your own Minecraft world or your chores going, and let's get into the deep end. Our first story today is titled, My Husband Has Been Donating Our Savings to a Woman I've Never Met. The poster, let's call her Sarah, has been married to her husband Mark for 7 years. They have been saving up for a down payment on a house, about $40,000. They had a goal to buy by the end of the year, and Sarah had been working overtime shift at the hospital just to make it happen. When Sarah went to check the balance to get a pre-approval letter from the bank, she realized the account was almost empty. There was only $3,000 left. When she pulled the statements, she saw monthly transfers of $2,000 going to a private account for the last year and a half. When she confronted Mark, he didn't even try to lie. He told her he was supporting his soulmate from high school who had fallen on hard times. This woman, who he hadn't seen in 15 years, had reached out to him on Facebook saying she was a struggling single mom. Mark claimed it was purely charitable and that he didn't want to tell Sarah because he knew she wouldn't understand the spiritual connection he had with this woman's well-being. He actually tried to frame Sarah as the greedy one for being upset that their house fund was gone. He told her that her focus on material things, like a house, was a sign of her shrunken soul. The thing that gets me about Mark's behavior here is that it's a classic case of financial infidelity mixed with a savior complex. Mark isn't just a nice guy, he's someone who prioritized the external validation of being a hero to a stranger over the stability and the trust of his own wife. By calling it a spiritual connection, he's using this deep emotional language to gaslight Sarah. He wants her to feel like a bad person for valuing money over a human life, even though that money represented their shared future and her literal physical labor. When you look at the secret life aspect of this, it's actually pretty chilling. People who do this often feel a sense of power in having a secret that only they and one other person know. It's a form of emotional cheating, even if it's not physical. He was building a deep, supportive relationship with another woman using the literal labor and sacrifices of his wife. Sarah had been working 60-hour weeks to save that money, and Mark was effectively handing her hard work over to a ghost from his past to feed his own ego. He needed to feel like a provider for someone who didn't know his flaws. As the story goes on, you start to see that Mark's charity wasn't about the woman at all. It was about how the woman made him feel. He loved the version of himself that was a guardian angel. He didn't care that Sarah was coming home exhausted and stressed about their future because in his mind he was on a higher spiritual plane. It shows a complete lack of empathy for his partner. He viewed Sarah as a resource to be used rather than a person to be loved. When the fallout began, Sarah did some digging. She found the soulmate on social media and discovered she wasn't struggling at all. She was actually living quite comfortably, posting photos of new designer bags and expensive dinners, likely funded by Mark's donations. When Sarah showed Mark the proof, he didn't get angry at the woman. He got angry at Sarah for spying and destroying the purity of his charity. This is a huge indicator that Mark was totally lost in his own delusion. He cared more about the fantasy of being a savior than the reality of being a husband. The impact on Sarah's mental health was devastating. She started questioning if anything in their 7 year marriage was real. If he could lie about $40,000, what else was he lying about? She realized that Mark had created a hierarchy in his head where this other woman was at the top and Sarah was just the worker who funded his fantasies. It's a level of disrespect that you can't really bounce back from. The betrayal wasn't just the money, it was the fact that he watched her exhaust herself for a goal he was actively sabotaging. Sarah ended up filing for divorce immediately. In the settlement, her lawyer was able to argue that since the money was taken from a joint savings account without her consent for non marital purposes, Mark owed her the full half of what was taken. Because he didn't have the cash, she ended up getting his entire 401k and a larger share of their home equity to compensate for the stolen house fund. She was ruthless in the courtroom, and honestly, she had every right to be. She treated the divorce like a business liquidation because Mark had already liquidated the emotional side of the marriage. The soulmate situation had a pretty predictable ending too. Mark tried to move in with the woman, thinking they would finally start their spiritual life together. But the second the checks stopped coming and Sarah's lawyer started subpoenaing the woman's bank records, she blocked him on everything. She didn't want Mark. She wanted Mark's wife's paycheck. He's now living in his parents' basement, still wondering why everyone is so mean to him and why Sarah chose money over love. My take on this: poetic justice at its finest. If you want to play hero with someone else's money, you should be prepared to lose the person who actually cares about you. Sarah didn't just lose a husband, she cut off a parasite. Mark didn't want a partner, he wanted a victim to fund his ego. It's a reminder that financial transparency isn't just about math, it's about respect. Sarah is now living in a condo she bought with her settlement, and Mark is realizing that spiritual connections don't pay the rent. Story number two is a look at some workplace sabotage that ruined a multi-million-dollar merger. The poster was a senior analyst at a high-stakes firm. He had a colleague, Jeff, who was always the office favorite, charismatic, funny, and seemingly the first person to offer help. They were both up for a promotion to vice president. The poster worked through his entire summer vacation to finish a report that would decide the merger. The day before the big presentation, the poster's laptop crashed and his backup files on the company server were mysteriously deleted. The poster was blamed for the technical failure and Jeff was given the lead by the CEO. Jeff presented a report that looked suspiciously similar to the poster's work, but with a few errors that caused the client to pull out of the deal. The company lost millions in potential revenue, and the poster was fired for gross incompetence and failing to secure his data. He was blacklisted from the city's top firm and spent a year working as a freelance consultant just to pay his bills, feeling like his entire career was over. However, a year later, the poster was hired by the firm that was originally supposed to merge with his old company. During a security audit of the old company's server, which the new firm now owned, the poster found something that made his blood run cold. It wasn't a glitch. Jeff hadn't just deleted the files. He had installed a remote access Trojan on the poster's computer months before the presentation. He had been ghosting the poster's work for an entire year. stealing the best ideas for his own smaller projects while slowly corrupting the poster's main files. The reason Jeff's presentation failed wasn't because he was dumb. It was because the corruption script he wrote worked too well. It was designed to eat the poster's files, but when Jeff copied those files to his own drive, he accidentally brought the script with him. It ate into the final data before he could present it. He literally sabotaged himself while trying to bury his friend. It's a perfect example of a snake biting its own tail. When you think about the kind of person Jeff is, he fits the mold of a corporate psychopath perfectly. He didn't care about the company's success or the millions of dollars at stake. He only cared about the poster's failure. To a person like Jeff, life is a zero-sum game. For him to win, someone else must lose, and he was willing to destroy a multi-million-dollar deal just to ensure his colleague didn't get the VP title. The amount of effort it took to maintain a remote access hack for months shows a level of premeditated malice that goes way beyond office politics. When the poster brought this evidence to the board of the new merged company, the fallout was swift and legal. Jeff wasn't just fired, he was sued for corporate espionage and intentional interference with business relations. Because the merger had been delayed a year due to his actions, the damages were in the millions. Jeff's office favorite mask slipped instantly. He tried to claim the poster had set him up, but the metadata and the Trojan's origin point were undeniable. He lost his reputation and his career in a single afternoon. The way this betrayal hits is just different. The poster had to deal with a year of imposter syndrome, thinking he really was incompetent, only to find out he was being hunted by a colleague. It shows that in high pressure environments, charismatic people can sometimes be the most dangerous because they use their social capital to hide their lack of ethics. Jeff used everyone's liking of him as a shield while he committed digital crimes. Jeff ended up losing his house to pay for the legal fees and is now permanently blacklisted from the industry. He works a low-level sales job now and still tries to tell people he was the victim of a tech glitch. This story shows us that some people are so obsessed with winning the internal competition that they don't realize they are burning the whole building down. Jeff's ego was so large that he thought he could control the chaos he created, but the digital footprint is forever. If you really sit and look at the outcome here, it's a win for the tech savvy and a loss for the snakes. I love a story where the metadata is the hero. In the digital age, your mask can only stay on for so long before your digital footprint catches up to you. The poster went from being a failure to being the guy who saved the company's integrity. Jeff, on the other hand, proved that being the likable guy in the office is a great way to hide a knife behind your back until you accidentally stab yourself with it. Story number 3 is a family secret that came out during a routine DNA test and shattered 40 years of history. A woman, Clara, got her husband a 23andMe kit for his birthday just for fun. When the results came back, it showed he had a first cousin living in the same city that he'd never heard of. When they reached out to this cousin, thinking it was just a long-lost relative, they discovered a secret his father had been hiding for 4 decades. The father hadn't just had a one-night stand. He had an entire second family 3 towns over that he had been supporting since the 80s. The level of planning it takes to maintain 2 families for 40 years is staggering. The father was a consultant who traveled for work 3 days a week. In reality, he was just driving an hour away to his other house. He had two wives, 5 children in total, and two separate sets of friends. Neither wife knew the other existed. The cousin from the DNA test was actually the son of the father's other daughter. He had managed to be at every birthday, every graduation, and every holiday for both families by alternating years and making up work emergencies. If you look at how this man's mind must have worked, it's actually pretty terrifying. To live a double life like that, you have to be a master of compartmentalization. You have to be able to shut off one brain and turn on another the moment you pull out of the driveway. It requires a complete lack of guilt and a terrifying ability to lie to the faces of people you supposedly love every single day for 40 years. He didn't just lie about where he was, he lied about the core of his identity. He was a different character for each family. When a secret came out, the father didn't apologize. He actually tried to justify it by saying he loved everyone so much he didn't want to choose. This is a classic narcissistic defense. He viewed himself as a provider and a hero for sacrificing his own peace to give two families a father. In reality, he was a selfish coward who wanted the ego boost of being the center of two worlds without the responsibility of being honest in either of them. He enjoyed the power of being the only person who knew the truth. The fallout was a total collapse of both families. The two wives actually met. They're both in their 60s now, and instead of fighting each other, they teamed up. They realized he had been funneling money from both of their joint accounts to pay for the two mortgages. They filed for divorce simultaneously, using the same lawyer to ensure he didn't hide any assets. The other family's children were just as devastated as Clara's husband. They all felt like their entire childhoods were a stage play, which, in a way, they were. The children's perspective is what makes this truly tragic. Clara's husband realized that every time his dad missed a game for a meeting, he was actually at a different game for a different kid. It makes every memory feel tainted. The other family always felt like something was off, like the father was always looking at the clock or never stayed for the whole weekend. They had internalized that weirdness as them not being good enough, only to find out it was because he had a whole other life to get back to. Thinking about the long term impact on everyone involved, it's just a mess. The father ended up alone in a small apartment, with all 5 of his children refusing to speak to him. He lost 10 people who love him because he couldn't be honest with one. Now he has no one to consult with but himself. The most ironic part is that he spent 40 years trying to have everything, and he ended up with absolutely nothing. His legacy is now just a story people tell about what happens when you lie for a living. What's crazy is that DNA tests are the ultimate truth tellers of the 21st century. You can lie for 40 years, but you can't lie to your genes. The father thought he was a genius for pulling it off, but he was really just building two houses on sand. The trauma of realizing your existence was a secret is something that takes years of therapy to unpack, but at least now the families can support each other in the truth. To wrap this one up, let it be a reminder that secrets have a way of coming to light, usually when you least expect it. This father thought he was the architect of a perfect life, but he was really just a squatter in two different homes. Now that the walls have come down, he's finally being seen for who he really is, a man who was so afraid of making a choice that he ended up losing the right to choose anything at all. Our final story today is a brutal case of social media revenge that destroyed two marriages in one post. A girl found out her boyfriend was cheating on her because he accidentally posted a live photo on Instagram. He posted a picture of a steak dinner at a high-end restaurant, but if you held your finger on the screen, you could hear a woman's voice say, "I can't believe your girlfriend actually thinks you're at a work conference. You're such a good liar, babe." The poster didn't confront him right away. She knew he was coming home in 2 days and that his parents were hosting a welcome home party for him because he had supposedly won a major award at this conference. She spent those 2 days gathering every single receipt of his cheating, the Tinder messages, the hotel bookings she found on his shared iPad, and of course the live photo. She didn't just want to break up. She wanted a public unmasking. She wanted the consequences to be as loud as the betrayal. When you look at the way she handled this, it was a total scorched earth approach. The poster was so deeply hurt by the casual way the mistress mocked her in that photo that she decided the only fair response was a total social execution. While some might say, just leave, the psychological impact of being mocked by the other woman often triggers a need for justice. She wanted to ensure that he couldn't go back to his family and play the good son anymore. She wanted the reality of his character to match his public reputation. At the party, in front of 20 family members, the boyfriend stood up to talk about his work trip. The poster asked to show a slideshow of his photos from the trip on the big TV so everyone could see his award. She played the steak the photo first and held the live button so the whole room heard the mistress's voice mocking the girlfriend. Then she scrolled through the screenshots of the Tinder messages where he called his parents stifling and his girlfriend boring. The silence in that room must have been deafening. The boyfriend's father, who was paying for the boyfriend's apartment and had helped him get his job, was so disgusted that he told him to move out that night. The boyfriend tried to claim it was just a prank, but the evidence was too overwhelming. He lost his girlfriend, his home, and the respect of his parents in about 5 minutes. But it didn't stop there. The mistress, it turns out, was also married to a man who was a local high school coach. The poster made sure to send the steak photo and the hotel receipts to that husband as well. By the time the boyfriend tried to call the mistress for a place to stay, she was already being kicked out of her own house. Two lives dismantled by one steak dinner and a 3-second audio clip. It's interesting to see how arrogance can be someone's downfall. Don't post live photos if you're a liar. But more importantly, this story shows that the perfect life some people project online is often a house of cards. The boyfriend was so arrogant that he thought he was untouchable, and that arrogance was his downfall. He thought he was the smartest person in the room, but he was undone by a feature on his own phone. The way this went down was just a masterclass in staying calm and being thorough. The poster is now living her best life, and honestly, she deserves it for that level of planning and composure. The boyfriend went from award winner to homeless cheater in a single evening. It shows that reputation is fragile, and once the truth is out, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. He tried to blame the poster for humiliating him, but she didn't humiliate him. His own actions did. So, to close this one out, be careful what you post, but even more so, be careful who you trust. People can be living entirely different lives behind the scenes, and sometimes all it takes is a 3-second audio clip to bring the whole thing crashing down. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up here. This Minecraft house is finally looking like a home. The decorations are coming along, and the run today was definitely a lot more productive. The interior is finally starting to match the exterior, and it feels like a real milestone for the channel. I really hope you guys enjoyed these stories. Honestly, let me know in the comments which one you thought was the most insane. Was it the spiritual house fund or the double family dad? I love hearing your takes. Don't forget to like and subscribe to keep the channel moving forward. I've been T, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.